We're here to talk about the new upcoming Sotie music album by Braden Koksal. It's called Specter, and it's a horror sci-fi album. Hi, Braden.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Excited to talk about this album and share it with everyone.
Thank you so much. I mean, you've been wonderful since I started Sotie Music, and this album, like everything you deliver, is very surprising.
Well, thank you so
Especially with
much.
the sounds, it's very unique. I think we achieved to do something out of the box in an industry where horror sci-fi is just like everywhere. So
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. There's so much out there, and we talked a lot about what kind of strategies and techniques that we can do to change up from what's out there and get something fresh and unique.
Yeah. So let me ask you some questions.
Sure, that sounds great.
All right. What inspired the sound design choices you made for this album, for the concept, and how did you create the sonic palette for it?
So we had a short, very quick brief before I started writing and composing anything. And you and I both talked about having organic elements blend in with synthesized elements. So
Mhm.
lots of synthesizers, but also blending in organic elements so that it feels a bit more grounded.
Mm.
So I ended up doing a lot of processing on organic instruments like violins, voices, a ton of voices. Those were both samples because I might not be the greatest singer, but I can do some chops. So a little bit of those are in there. And those have all been heavily processed with outboard hardware and in the box plugins as well to give them a unique sound and make it outside of the box.
Yeah, I mean, after listening to this album, I've been asking you to do a whole sound design album. So everything I is, you know, really cool. So were there any sound experiments that you tried for the first time for this album?
Definitely. So there's one technique that I use a lot in my music, and it's a technique called reamping. So that's the process of taking a sound and playing it through various different speakers. So I was thinking a lot about horror and how can we make sounds feel uncomfortable? Like what kind of speakers just sound very uncomfortable sounding?
Hmm.
So a lot of the processing I did with that was actually reamping sounds from that I recorded into those tracks and then process them through like my telephone speaker or a laptop speaker and then playing those volumes very, very high on the phone speaker or the laptop and that creates a very uncomfortable and eerie sound to it because it's just like this is so loud on a speaker that isn't so technology like
Yeah,
great as playing it on studio speakers
right.
and then recording that back into the cues and having that be a layer underneath the main sounds to create a bit of eeriness and uncomfortable sound to it.
That sounds really cool. I mean, we talked about the sound design part a lot, but the compositions are pretty musical at the same time. So I think that's really cool. Not like musical, like orchestral, that old school horror stuff, but they have like a very cool quirk to them almost. And it's not very standard in horror albums. They're usually just
Definitely
layered
not.
sound design. And it has this like quirky vibe with the rhythmic elements and stuff in the back ends. And, I really feel that's one of the things that makes the album stand out. How did you get inspired with that part?
So part of her like very short brief at the start was we're talking about how we wanted melody to be like a main ingredient to this album and how can we make melody work in horror. And I was thinking about horror melodies traditionally are very chromatic. So
Hmm.
in Western music we have a 7-note scale, but in horror I'm using the full 12-note keys on a keyboard and
Right.
then the pitches and keys in between those 12. So we get what's called the quarter tones.
You're right.
And so a lot of the melodies incorporate those tones and it creates a very unsettling sound to it. And with horror melodies, they can be very uncomfortable to listen to. And it's like,
Yeah.
how can we get this sounding interesting and cool without it being like nails on the chalkboard kind of sound to it?
Yeah.
So the quirkiness came from just allowing the notes be wherever they need to go to make it sound eerie, and as well as thinking about how can we make it sound almost catchy, because in a trailer cue we want something memorable. And so I was thinking about how like pop music has motifs. So I took that same concept but applied it with horror melodies that sound very uncomfortable and unsettling.
That was really cool. I mean, we're seeing more and more, just like how the superhero movies and the Marvel shifted into having so much more comedy in it. I think we're now seeing some of that, not comedy, obviously, but humor mixed into horror genres as well. So I think it's a really cool album that will work for the darkest, weirdest horror stuff. But at the same time, some of those cues could really carry some humor in a
Definitely.
very disturbing way. So, is there a specific cue you believe captures the concept of this album the most?
Yeah, let's listen to Corrupt Machine.
All right, let's listen to maybe the intro and then the backhand section to get a general idea and vibe, and hopefully everyone can listen to the album next week when it's released.
Sounds great.